I'm Eva Carter, and in one heart-stopping moment, I discovered that my fiancé, Liam Sterling, planned to use me as a mere stepping stone for his ruthless ambition. I was standing at the edge of my world, betrayed and determined to turn my pain into power. Now, as I unravel the secrets behind his deception, you're about to witness a journey of vengeance, courage, and rebirth. Stay tuned, hit that like button, and subscribe. You won't want to miss a single second of this story. I always believed I had it all. A brilliant career as the CEO of my own tech company, a luxurious penthouse in San Francisco, and the promise of an extravagant wedding with Liam Sterling, the charming corporate attorney who seemed to have it all together. Yet as I sat late into the night, struggling to write my wedding vows in the quiet of my penthouse overlooking the bay, an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. There was a weight in my chest that no amount of success or glamour could dispel. That night, while the city buzzed softly beneath me, I found myself distracted by a pervasive unease. I had chosen this moment to pen my heartfelt promises, but my mind was elsewhere, lost in a murmur of doubts I couldn't quite place. I kept glancing at the cufflinks I had packed for Liam's office earlier, a sentimental gift from his mother, Margaret Sterling, who had always seemed so invested in our union. They sat on the table like silent witnesses to the life I thought I knew. I had decided to visit Liam's office that afternoon to drop off those cufflinks. I expected nothing more than a brief, pleasant exchange. Instead, I overheard words that shattered the perfect illusion I had so carefully constructed in my mind. Standing quietly by the half-open door, my heart pounded as I listened to a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I could hear Liam's smooth, confident tone as he laughed with one of his colleagues. Eva is just a means to an end. Once we're married, I'll control her company. Then I'll move on to someone more fitting. Those words cut through me like a shard of glass. I felt as if the air had been sucked from my lungs. For a long, paralyzing moment, I stood frozen, my mind reeling and my body betraying me with its trembling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Every promise, every shared smile, it all crumbled in that instant. Without a word, I backed away slowly and left the office, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the corridor, as if marking the death of my innocence. I wasn't sure what I would do next. Part of me screamed to confront Liam, to demand answers, but another, quieter voice inside urged caution. I decided then that I needed to know the full truth before taking any rash actions. Back in the solitude of my penthouse, I locked myself in my home office. The familiar glow of my computer screen became both a beacon of hope and a harsh reminder of betrayal. I opened the shared business account that Liam and I maintained, a joint portal into what I thought was our shared future. As I scrolled through his emails, my hands trembled. I discovered contracts and financial transfers that painted a stark picture of deceit. There were also several messages between Liam and a woman named Vanessa Hale, a name I had never associated with him until now. The shock of his betrayal slowly transformed into a cold, calculating determination. I felt a strange calm wash over me, a clarity born from heartbreak. Instead of sinking into tears, I realized I could channel my pain into power. I picked up my phone and, with steady hands, dialed the number of a trusted private investigator. I needed every scrap of evidence I could gather to expose the man I once loved. Just as I began to piece together the puzzle of lies, a soft buzz broke the silence. I glanced at my phone and saw a text from the investigator. "You'll want to see what I found." That single line, simple yet ominous, resonated deep within me. In that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. Determination replaced despair, and I resolved to uncover every hidden truth. I steeled myself for what lay ahead, aware that this was only the beginning of a journey I had never chosen, but one I would navigate with every ounce of strength I possessed. As I closed my laptop and prepared to leave for my meeting with the investigator, I felt the heavy burden of my new reality. I no longer clung to the illusion of perfection. I embraced the raw truth, however painful it might be. My heart, once so full of hope for a shared future with Liam, now beat with a singular purpose: to reclaim control of my life and dismantle the facade that had been built on lies. I sat in a quiet, dimly lit cafe tucked away in downtown San Francisco, the clink of porcelain cups and soft murmurs in the background serving as a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Tonight, I wasn't a grieving bride-to-be. I was a strategist armed with evidence, determined to reclaim my power. Across from me sat the private investigator, his face half hidden in shadow as he slid a small USB drive across the table. His eyes met mine briefly, conveying a silent promise that he was on my side. I knew then that this drive held the key to unlocking the hidden world of Liam's deceit. The cafe's atmosphere was almost surreal, a place of calm in the midst of my turbulent emotions. I could still feel the sting of betrayal from that fateful afternoon, the echo of Liam's callous words lingering in my ears. Yet as I listened to the investigator outline the contents of the USB drive, a quiet fury began to burn within me. Documents, spreadsheets, and emails detailed Liam's offshore accounts and his illicit affair with a woman named Vanessa Hale. Each piece of evidence was a confirmation of my worst fears. The man I had trusted was nothing more than a master manipulator, using me as a pawn in his grand scheme. I scanned through the digital files on my laptop, my eyes skimming over lines of text that detailed transactions and secret communications. One particular email caught my attention. It was a conversation between Liam and Vanessa, discussing their future together once Liam had successfully taken control of my company. Their words were laced with arrogance and cold calculation, as if our union was merely a stepping stone to further his ambitions. The realization hit me hard. Exposing their affair alone would not suffice. I needed to obliterate his reputation and dismantle the empire he had built on lies. As I absorbed the gravity of the situation, I made a decision. I would become the architect of his downfall. With trembling resolve, I initiated a series of anonymous emails to the SEC, carefully hinting at Liam's illegal financial dealings. I knew the risk of playing this dangerous game, but the taste of betrayal was too bitter to let go unpunished. Even as I composed what appeared to be a loving, congratulatory text to Liam, one that would keep him unsuspecting, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Every keystroke was a calculated move in the game I had decided to play. I sent the text with a practiced nonchalance, the words, "I can't wait to see you at the wedding," appearing on his screen as if nothing were amiss. Yet behind that veneer of normalcy, my mind was racing. I then turned my attention to the company files, sifting through contracts and transaction records for any shred of evidence that could legally incriminate him. My eyes grew sharp, scanning every detail as I compiled a dossier that would later serve as the ultimate weapon against him. With every piece of evidence I unearthed, I felt a growing sense of resolve. I reached into the depths of my memory, recalling every conversation, every fleeting gesture that now seemed laden with deceit. I carefully assembled all the documents and emails, placing them into a sealed envelope. This envelope, small and unassuming, was destined to be hidden in my wedding dress, an ironic twist that would later expose the man who thought he could control everything. Just as I finished organizing the files, my phone vibrated with a new message. I glanced at the screen and my heart skipped a beat when I saw a cryptic text from an anonymous number. "Not everyone you fool stays fooled forever." The message was short, but its implications were profound. It was as if the universe itself was confirming my suspicions, warning Liam that his time of unchecked power was drawing to a close. I felt a surge of satisfaction tempered by the cold calculation of my next move. I had transformed my pain into a weapon, and I would wield it with precision. In that moment, I resolved that nothing would stop me from reclaiming what was rightfully mine, not just my company, but my dignity and my future. As I closed my laptop and tucked the sealed envelope securely away, I couldn't help but feel a deep, unwavering conviction. I was no longer the naive woman who had once believed in fairy tale love. I was a force of nature, ready to play the game on my own terms. I knew that tonight was only the beginning and that Liam's unease would soon grow into full-blown panic. For now, I sat back, taking a deep breath as I prepared to step into the next phase of this treacherous game, a game where the stakes were nothing less than everything. I began to sense a change in the atmosphere around Liam. Even from afar, his once certain demeanor was faltering. Although I was not in his office that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Over the past few days, subtle whispers and indirect reports had reached me. Liam, the man I once believed to be so self-assured, now appeared distracted and jumpy. I learned that in the dead of night, within the cold, shadowed confines of his office, he had started to feel as though unseen eyes were upon him. It was during a brief moment of quiet when I overheard a hushed conversation between some of his staff that the truth began to unravel. They spoke of Liam's restless pacing in his office after closing hours, his gaze constantly shifting as if expecting someone to emerge from the darkness. One staff member mentioned that the silence in his office had grown almost oppressive, like the very shadows had thickened with a menacing intent. Even though I wasn't there to witness it myself, every word painted a picture of a man slowly succumbing to paranoia. I later recalled that night when Margaret, Liam's mother, visited his office unexpectedly. I wasn't present, but I later pieced together snippets from a conversation I overheard on the phone. Margaret had questioned him about some disturbing rumors, that Vanessa, his secret paramour, might be more than just a casual fling. Liam, ever the picture of confidence, had brushed off her concerns. Yet even in his dismissive tone, I sensed a tremor of uncertainty. That single exchange was enough to plant a seed of doubt in his mind, a doubt that would soon grow into full-blown anxiety. Within a day or two, things escalated. Liam received an email from the SEC, a red flag that could not be ignored. Though he tried to maintain control, I later learned that he had frantically attempted to erase digital evidence from his computer. The irony was bitter. His efforts to cover his tracks only confirmed that his world was beginning to crumble. I wasn't present to see him in that moment, but I felt the weight of his impending doom as if it were my own. I also learned that Noah Green, his trusted business partner, had taken him aside. In a hushed, urgent tone, Noah had warned him, saying, "Someone is coming for you. I don't know who, but they're close." I could almost picture Liam's face, a mixture of disbelief and growing terror, as he realized that his carefully constructed world was under threat. The warning, though brief, resonated with him, and soon after, Liam made a drastic decision. He instructed Vanessa to disappear for a while, hoping to remove any evidence of her involvement. Desperation drove him to hire a security team to scour his office and home for any surveillance devices or clues that might explain this creeping dread. That same night, as darkness enveloped his luxurious San Francisco office, an anonymous envelope arrived at Liam's doorstep. I later heard that inside it lay a single stark piece of paper with the chilling message, "Tick-tock." Even from afar, I could sense the finality of that message. It was as if time itself were mocking him, counting down the moments until his inevitable downfall. Although I was still confined to my own battle against the betrayal that had shattered my trust, I couldn't help but feel a perverse satisfaction in knowing that the man who had deceived me was now trapped in a web of his own making. Through whispered rumors, late-night phone calls, and the unspoken dread that filled the corridors of his office, it became clear that Liam was now isolated, haunted by his own secrets. In that moment, I understood that he was trapped, a prisoner of his mounting paranoia and the relentless pursuit of truth that I had set into motion. And yet, he had no idea who was behind this orchestrated descent into chaos. As I sat in the solitude of my own space, preparing for the next step in my plan, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. The man who once exuded unwavering confidence now trembled under the weight of his own guilt and the consequences of his actions. I knew that the coming days would only intensify his terror, pushing him further into a corner from which there would be no escape. I arrived at the Vineyard Resort in Napa Valley under a full, luminous moon. Despite the luxurious surroundings, rolling hills, meticulously tended vines, and an ambiance of refined celebration, something in the air felt inexplicably ominous. I could sense the electricity of impending change, a foreboding that seemed to settle even over the quiet elegance of the resort. That night, as I walked along the stone pathways, my thoughts were a storm of mixed emotions. I maintained my calm exterior for the sake of appearances, but inside, I was meticulously observing every detail. I knew that tonight was critical. Liam had already arrived, and I could almost feel his growing unease, even though I was focused on my own plans. His presence, once so confident and assured, now appeared furtive, a subtle shudder in his step that I could sense even from afar. In the solitude of my suite, I awaited the unfolding of events with a detached intensity. I knew that my calm was not born of ignorance, but from a deep, strategic resolve. I had orchestrated every move, and tonight would be no exception. Yet even as I steeled myself, I couldn't ignore the uneasy whispers of fate. When I later learned that Liam had found a single, jet-black feather lying on his pillow, a symbol of bad luck and forewarning, I felt a grim satisfaction. The feather, so out of place in that luxurious setting, confirmed that forces beyond his control were beginning to take hold. Throughout the evening, I kept a careful watch on every conversation and every gesture. In a hushed moment, I overheard Margaret Sterling, Liam's own mother, speaking with one of her aides in a quiet corridor. Her tone was soft but laced with conflicted resolve. She mentioned having overheard a cryptic conversation between me and my investigator, a conversation that hinted at deeper, undisclosed truths. I couldn't help but wonder what Margaret was truly feeling, regret, perhaps, or the dawning realization that her long-held loyalties were faltering. My phone buzzed unexpectedly with a message from Vanessa Hale. Her text was curt, almost desperate. "I want out." It was the final piece in a puzzle that had been slowly coming together over these past tumultuous days. Vanessa's withdrawal confirmed my suspicions that even Liam's closest conspirators were beginning to desert him. That single message sent a jolt through me, a reminder that every ally in his treacherous game was now turning away. Unable to shake the disquiet that now shrouded him, Liam eventually confronted me. In a moment of raw tension, I found him standing in the softly lit corridor of the resort. His eyes, normally brimming with arrogant confidence, now flickered with unmistakable paranoia. He demanded answers, his voice quavering as he accused me of harboring secrets that could destroy him. Yet, I maintained a facade of calm excitement about the wedding. I smiled warmly, played the part of the elated bride-to-be, even as every fiber of my being calculated the next step of my plan. His confrontation only deepened his inner turmoil. Later, in the privacy of his hotel room, I later learned that Liam stood before a mirror, his eyes searching his own reflection as if for a clue to his unraveling. For the first time, he seemed to question whether he had underestimated me, whether the woman he once saw as a mere accessory to his ambitions was, in fact, the one who would bring about his downfall. As midnight approached and the cool night air whispered through the open window of his room, I knew that tomorrow would mark the dawn of a wedding day, unlike any he had ever imagined. A day where every carefully constructed lie would finally be exposed. I first learned about Liam's disturbing state when a close source at the resort called me late that morning. He had woken up in his luxurious suite at the Napa Valley Resort, drenched in sweat from a nightmare that left him trembling. According to the message I received, In his dream, he stood at the altar, only instead of seeing me, the church was empty, and disembodied whispers of betrayal filled the air. Although Liam dismissed it as nothing more than pre-wedding jitters, I sensed that something far more ominous was brewing beneath his polished exterior. From my vantage point, I observed that the suite, despite its undeniable elegance with sheer curtains filtering soft sunlight into a silence that felt almost oppressive, had an underlying air of desolation. It was as if the very space around him had become a prison, echoing his internal turmoil. I couldn't help but wonder if that nightmare was just the beginning of his unraveling, a prelude to the chaos I had been meticulously orchestrating. Later that morning, while preparing for my own part in the unfolding drama, I received a cryptic text on Liam's behalf, a message that sent a chill down my spine. "It all ends today." The simplicity of those 4 words carried a weight that seemed to suspend time itself. By then, I had already arranged for discreet monitoring of Liam's activities. I learned that he had rushed to check his security footage immediately after receiving that message, only to find that crucial files from the past 48 hours had been mysteriously deleted. This revelation confirmed my suspicions. Someone was actively tampering with his digital trail, and the net of deceit was tightening around him. As the day progressed, the atmosphere at the resort grew increasingly tense. Vanessa Hale, who had been Liam's secret accomplice, made a bold move. Under the cover of discreet conversation in a secluded corner of the resort's lounge, she met with me. With a hushed urgency, Vanessa handed me copies of bank records that unequivocally proved Liam's offshore accounts, evidence that would later prove damning. I could feel my resolve harden with every page I reviewed. The deception was deeper than I had feared, and exposing it would be my weapon. Meanwhile, Margaret Sterling, Liam's own mother, had not been idle. Later that afternoon, I received a report that she had cornered Liam in a quiet corridor near his suite. With a voice that betrayed a mix of maternal concern and simmering anger, she demanded to know if the rumors about his indiscretions were true. I later learned that, in that confrontation, Liam had tried desperately to gaslight her, insisting that all such talk was nothing but baseless lies. But his tone, strained, defensive, revealed cracks in his armor. It was in those moments that I sensed Margaret's loyalty was beginning to shift. She was no longer willing to shield her son from the consequences of his actions. The tipping point came when Liam's lawyer called him, his tone urgent and measured. He informed Liam that the SEC had launched a formal investigation into the irregularities in his financial dealings. In a sudden fit of panic, Liam attempted to access his offshore accounts. I later heard that all his efforts were futile. They were frozen, leaving him with no recourse. That call, that moment of sheer helplessness, signaled to me that his downfall was imminent. I watched from a distance as news of his mounting crisis spread like wildfire. Later that day, I received word that, in a burst of rage and despair, Liam had stormed out of his suite, apparently in search of me, perhaps to confront me or to seek some semblance of reassurance. But I was not there. I had already gone underground, my focus unwavering on the plan I had set in motion. In the corridors of the resort, I later learned that Margaret had watched him storm away with a grim, resolute expression, her decision to abandon her son completely now cemented. As evening approached and the dark silhouette of the upcoming ceremony loomed, I could almost sense a palpable doom radiating from Liam. I kept my emotions tightly in check as I prepared for what was to come, but inside, a cold satisfaction mingled with pity. Despite all his power and control, he was now teetering on the edge, oblivious to the final crushing blow that awaited him. I sat in my own quiet room, reflecting on the day's events and the shifting tides of fate. The evidence was mounting, the alliances crumbling. In that moment, I understood that the wedding day, which he had once anticipated with arrogant certainty, would not be the celebration he expected. It would instead mark the beginning of his ultimate collapse, a collapse that I was orchestrating with every deliberate move. The wedding march began, its gentle, stately notes filling the air as hundreds of guests rose to their feet. I stood at the back of the lavish outdoor venue, a sprawling Napa Valley estate bathed in the warm, golden light of a deceptively serene afternoon. The gentle hum of conversation and the soft clicking of camera shutters created a backdrop that belied the storm raging within me. From my vantage point, I could see Liam Sterling, once the epitome of confidence, now a trembling figure struggling to maintain composure as he watched me glide down the aisle. His eyes, wide with panic and disbelief, betrayed the crumbling certainty he once exuded. I moved with a calm deliberation that masked the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Every step I took was measured, every gesture carefully rehearsed. I was determined to execute my final move with absolute precision. I had transformed my pain into power, and now, in front of a sea of high-profile guests and a throng of flashing cameras, I was about to expose the man who had betrayed me. My mind was razor-sharp, focused solely on the task ahead. The setting was almost surreal, a picturesque outdoor wedding venue nestled among rolling hills and vast vineyards. The beauty of the scene, with its vibrant blooms and meticulously groomed lawns, created a stark contrast to the dark undercurrents that would soon shatter this illusion of perfection. I could sense every pair of eyes on me, but I remained impassive, my face an unreadable mask of calm determination. I noted with a silent satisfaction that even Liam's mother, Margaret Sterling, was present, seated prominently in the front row. I saw her fingers tighten around a sealed envelope that she had clutched throughout the ceremony, a symbol of the final blow she was about to deliver. Beside her, Noah Green, Liam's anxious business partner, fidgeted visibly, his discomfort palpable in every nervous glance. Just as the officiant began to speak, I raised my hand slowly, drawing every eye towards me. In that electrifying moment, I reached up into my wedding gown and pulled out a slim, well-organized folder. My voice, steady and clear, cut through the murmur of the crowd as I began to read aloud. Every word was a calculated dagger aimed at Liam's carefully constructed facade. I exposed his crimes in real time, reading from his private emails that detailed financial fraud, unbridled infidelity, and a manipulative scheme to seize control of my company. The shock in the room was immediate. Gasps erupted from the guests, and the click of camera shutters intensified, capturing every moment of humiliation. As I spoke, I felt a surge of inner strength. I recalled every sleepless night, every moment of betrayal, and every time I had doubted my own worth. Now, with each sentence, I reclaimed the dignity that had been so callously stripped from me. The evidence I laid out was irrefutable, a litany of deceit that left no room for denial. Then, as if summoned by fate itself, Vanessa Hale stepped forward. Her presence confirmed everything. Her quiet nod and brief statement served as the final, crushing corroboration of my words. It was a moment of brutal clarity for all in attendance. At that instant, chaos erupted. Liam, his face a mask of fury and desperation, lunged forward in a futile attempt to snatch the incriminating papers from my hands. But security quickly intervened, barring his path with an impenetrable wall of authority. Amid the commotion, I saw Margaret rise from her seat. With a voice that was both steady and unyielding, she declared to the assembled crowd, "You were never worthy of this family's name." Her words, laden with the weight of years of blind devotion turned to bitter disillusionment, reverberated through the venue. Moments later, a cadre of SEC agents emerged from the wings, announcing that an official indictment had been issued against Liam. The gravity of his impending downfall was now undeniable. In the midst of this maelstrom, I could sense Liam's last desperate plea. He reached out toward me, his voice cracking as he pleaded for some semblance of forgiveness. But I remained unmoved. With deliberate calm, I removed the engagement ring from my finger, a symbol of our shattered union, and let it drop at his feet. The ring clattered on the marble floor, echoing the finality of his defeat. One by one, the guests began to murmur and retreat, their expressions a blend of shock and pity, as if witnessing the collapse of an empire. In the final dismal moments of the ceremony, I watched as federal agents marched Liam away, their grip unyielding. There was no grand display of retribution, only the quiet, inevitable consequence of his own misdeeds. I turned away, my head held high, every step I took marking a resolute farewell to the life I once knew. As I walked slowly toward the exit, my mind was already racing ahead to what would come next. I knew that the aftermath of this day would reverberate for years to come, forever altering the landscape of my life and the world Liam once ruled. Though his presence was now a ghost haunting the corridors of memory, the damage he inflicted would linger like a scar. Yet, in that very moment, I felt a profound liberation. I had reclaimed control, not only of my company, but of my destiny. It had been 2 long weeks since the scandalous wedding that never was, a day that transformed my life and splashed my name across every major headline. Now, as I sat alone in my penthouse in San Francisco, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the aftermath. Every day, the news reminded me of that fateful event. The images of a shattered man, the murmurs of betrayal, and the echoes of a once promising future now lost to deceit. My home, once a sanctuary of innovation and hope, now bore the marks of my public victory over corruption. Yet despite the triumph, I felt an unexpected loneliness, a quiet void that no amount of accolades could fill. The very screens that once celebrated my downfall of Liam now replayed endless stories of his disgrace. Meanwhile, Margaret Sterling, his mother, struggled on her own battleground at her sprawling estate. I had heard that she was now facing severe backlash for disowning her son, a decision that haunted her in the silence of night. Every so often I caught glimpses of Vanessa Hale in the media. She was cooperating with the authorities, negotiating a plea deal that seemed to seal her fate as well as mine. And then there was Liam, the man who once exuded arrogance and ambition, now languished behind bars at a federal detention center, his voice reduced to desperate whispers as he tried, unsuccessfully, to negotiate his way out of the consequences of his actions. One chilly evening, as I sat in my living room overlooking the twinkling lights of the city, a delicate envelope arrived. It was a final letter from Liam, his handwriting unmistakable, yet tainted with regret. In it, he pleaded for forgiveness, a feeble attempt to reclaim some vestige of the love he once claimed to hold for me. I read his words in silence, feeling a complex mix of sorrow and vindication. There was no warmth in his apology, only the cold echo of a man who had chosen power over love. Not long after, an unexpected job offer landed in my inbox. It was from a prestigious corporate ethics foundation, a role that promised not only professional growth, but also a platform to champion transparency and justice. The offer made me pause. For a moment, I debated whether to embrace this opportunity and leave the painful past behind, or to cling to the memories and lessons it had etched into my soul. That internal struggle led me to a decision I knew I had to face. In a moment of resolve, I arranged to visit Liam in prison. It was to be our final conversation, a chance for closure, however bitter it might be. As I walked through the cold, sterile corridors of the detention center, every step was heavy with memories of what had once been and what could never be again. In the visiting room, Liam sat across from me, his eyes dull with defeat. His voice, hoarse yet desperate, broke the silence. I did love you, in my own way. I looked into his eyes, those eyes that once sparkled with ambition and charm, and felt nothing but a profound sorrow. I replied with a calm that belied the turbulent emotions within me. You loved power, and now you have none. The words, simple and unadorned, seemed to hang in the air like a final verdict. In that moment, I saw the full measure of his downfall. Liam, stripped of every semblance of control, understood that he had lost everything, not just his freedom, but the respect and trust of those who once believed in him. After our conversation, I left the visiting room with a heavy heart but a determined spirit. I later learned that Margaret, burdened by her own guilt and regret, had resolved never to visit him again. It was a harsh, but perhaps inevitable consequence of a lifetime spent in denial. That night, I found myself alone on my balcony, gazing out over the sprawling city skyline. The glittering lights below whispered of countless possibilities. In that quiet moment, a sense of liberation washed over me. I realized that I was finally free. Not free from the memories, but free to build a future unburdened by the past. I knew that this was not the end, but rather the beginning of a new chapter in my life. The pain had been profound, and the scars would remain, but they no longer held me captive. Instead, they served as a reminder of the strength I had discovered within myself. A year has passed since everything changed, and now I find myself standing in front of a packed auditorium at Stanford University Business School. The air hums with anticipation as I deliver a lecture on corporate ethics, an ironic twist for someone whose personal history is so deeply entwined with betrayal and retribution. As I speak, I can feel the weight of the past gradually lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a cautious hope for what the future might hold. The stage is set in a grand lecture hall where the polished wooden panels and soft lighting create an atmosphere of intellectual gravitas. I can see rows of eager faces, many of whom must have read about the scandal that once shook the business world. Yet, in this moment, I am no longer defined by that turbulent chapter of my life. I speak with a calm authority that comes from years of hard-won experience, sharing insights not just about corporate governance, but about the importance of integrity and the courage it takes to rebuild. After the lecture, I step off the stage and into a new world. Later that day, I visit Margaret's estate, a sprawling property that has since been transformed by her into a charitable haven for those in need. It is remarkable to see how she, too, has redefined herself. No longer is she solely remembered as the mother who once stood by a flawed son. Now she is a benefactor whose actions speak louder than any past misdeed. Our brief conversation over tea is filled with a mutual understanding of loss and redemption, a quiet acknowledgement that we are both moving forward. That evening, while the city outside pulses with life, I find solace in a quiet cafe tucked away from the hustle. It is there that Daniel Hayes, a distinguished professor with a genuine interest in my work, joins me. As we settle into a corner booth, he asks the simple question that echoes in my mind: "What's next for you?" For a moment, the question stuns me into silence. I realize with a pang of uncertainty that after so long fighting, after so much pain and struggle, I have forgotten how to simply live. I have spent years channeling every ounce of my energy into dismantling the lies that once imprisoned me. Now, with the battle behind me, I face an unfamiliar void, one where the future is wide open, but also frightening in its uncertainty. Unable to shake the need for closure, I decide to revisit the resort where the wedding never happened, a place that has come to symbolize the turning point in my life. I travel back to Napa Valley, to that very vineyard resort where the facade of perfection was shattered. Standing alone on a quiet terrace under a starlit sky, I wander through the grounds, each step taking me further away from the memories of betrayal. In the stillness of the night, I finally allow myself to release the lingering pain. I let go of the anger, the hurt, and the relentless need for retribution. There, in that profound solitude, I feel a deep sense of liberation, an affirmation that I am no longer a prisoner of my past. The next morning, buoyed by the emotional catharsis of my solitary journey, I return to my life with renewed purpose. Daniel's job offer, extended earlier, now seems like a lifeline to a future defined not by vengeance, but by growth and ethical leadership. After careful thought, I decide to accept his offer to collaborate on a research project focused on corporate ethics. The project promises not only professional fulfillment, but also the opportunity to shape a future that is mine alone, a future built on transparency and the lessons I have learned the hard way. Later that afternoon, as I settle into my new routine, a final, unexpected surprise arrives. A single letter from Liam, the man whose betrayal once nearly shattered me, is delivered to my door. Its presence is both haunting and inconsequential, a relic of a past that no longer holds any power over me. I hold the envelope for a long moment, feeling its weight in my hand before deciding that I have nothing left to gain from revisiting old wounds. With a steady resolve, I walk over to the fireplace and drop the letter into the flickering flames. I watch it burn slowly, the words disintegrating into ash, symbolizing the final severance from a chapter of my life that is now closed forever. As the fire dies down, I lean back and look out the window at the sprawling cityscape below, the twinkling lights reflecting endless possibilities. In that quiet, contemplative moment, I know that my story is finally mine to write. There is no next chapter, only the promise of a new beginning, a future forged by my own choices and free from the shadows of betrayal. As I reflect on this incredible journey, I'm filled with gratitude for every lesson learned and every moment that transformed my pain into strength. Through the darkness of betrayal and the chaos of shattered illusions, I discovered that true empowerment comes from within. My story is a testament to resilience, the importance of honesty, and the courage to embrace a new beginning. I hope my journey inspires you to find light even in the darkest times. If my story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to me and helps spread a message of hope and transformation. Let's keep this conversation going. Share your own stories of overcoming challenges and finding your strength. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I appreciate every one of you for taking the time to listen and engage, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, stay strong, stay true, and remember that every ending is just the start of something new.